Here's what he says. He says, in my last post, I pointed out that some conservative evangelical Christians, maybe others, these are the ones I know about, claim that Jesus in the Bible is actually to be understood as Yahweh. I think that's completely wrong. And in this post, I want to explain why. Okay. Again, if someone knows better than I do, let me know. Well, how about B.B. Warfield? You're a Princeton grad. That's where your PhD is from. All right? Go to B.B. Warfield. Simple enough. There are many others. But I've never even heard the claim, let alone discussion of it, until very recently. Really? I wonder if there are any early Christian theologians who have this view. Really? Or even later ones, prior to recent times? Ooh. Well, there was those strange things that Justin Martyr said to Trypho the Jew that identified Jesus as Yahweh. That was the middle of the 2nd century? It is not the view of traditional Christian theology, at least as I learned it once upon a time. Do you hear these weasel words? You mean as you didn't learn it once upon a time? It was certainly not the view of the earliest Christians. It is not a view set forth in the Bible. The Bible, of course, does not have the Trinity, but when Christianity formally had the doctrine of the Trinity, the Father was Yahweh and Christ was his Son. At least that's what Christians who read their Old Testament said. Now, I told everybody, hey, save this. Save this article, lest it disappear into the mists of time. Because, wow, here is Bart Ehrman assuming Unitarianism, and hence ignoring passage after passage after passage where the New Testament writers identify the Son as Yahweh. They identify the Father as Yahweh as well. And there's the problem. He was never a Trinitarian because he was never actually a Christian. He never understood it. And now he's tilting at windmills. Want some examples? I didn't think you would ever ask. More than happy to provide a few. You probably, people who listen to this program, you should, off the top of your head, be able to give numerous examples where Jesus is identified as Yahweh in the New Testament. You should be able to give examples where the Father is identified as Yahweh as well, because they both are, and that's the point. The same New Testament. See, and this is why Bart can't do systematic theology, is he does not believe that you can do systematic theology. He says, the Bible doesn't know anything about the Trinity. You can't understand the New Testament without understanding the Trinity. The writers absolutely would be babbling incoherently, which is basically what he thinks they're doing, if you don't have the doctrine of the Trinity. If you don't recognize that Peter was an experiential Trinitarian. He heard the Father speak from heaven. He walked with the Son. He's now indwelt by the Holy Spirit. That requires you believing that the Bible is a consistent whole, which is the fundamental thing that Bart Ehrman does not want you to believe. And he doesn't, so therefore he can't even begin to meaningfully comment on what the New Testament teaches. Because from his perspective, the New Testament teaches nothing. The New Testament does not teach anything. The New Testament teaches differing and contradictory views depending on which book of the Bible you're reading. All right? So, where would you go? Well, there are so many. I'm just going to cover two real quick. You already are familiar with these. So in John chapter 12, for this reason, verse 39, they could not believe, for Isaiah said again, quoting from the Greek Septuagint, he has blinded their eyes, and he hardened their hearts, so that they would not see with their eyes and perceive with their heart and be converted, and I heal them. This is a quotation from Isaiah chapter 6. I see that right over there, if you want to verify that. This is from Isaiah's great temple vision, where I saw the Lord. Now, the first statement is saw Adonai, but then it's Yahweh speaking all the way through Isaiah chapter 6, sends Isaiah on and makes him his prophet and sends him on his mission, so on and so forth. And, of course, he's the one who is surrounded by the cherubim. Holy, holy, holy is Yahweh of hosts. And this is the vision that we have in Isaiah chapter 6. Then notice what John 12:41 says. These things, tauta ipen Isaiah, Notice he's quoting from the Greek Septuagint. Hati eiden tein daxan autu, kai elalesen peri autu. So Isaiah said these things. Now, what does he just quoted from? Isaiah 6. Temple vision. Because he saw his glory and he spoke about him. Now, if you think that somehow the subject has changed, verse says, nevertheless, many even of the rulers believed in him, eis auton, believed in him, but because the Pharisees, they were not confessing him publicly, they'd be put out of the synagogue. Who's the him? Jesus. Jesus. So these things Isaiah said because he saw his glory and he spoke about him. So Isaiah, whose glory did you see? I saw Yahweh's glory. Whose glory did Isaiah see? He saw Jesus' glory. Now, it's even stronger than that, as we've pointed out, because there is a fascinating textual variant in the Greek Septuagint in comparison to the Hebrew Masoretic text. And again, if you want a further discussion of this, like I said, the G3 sermon I did last year, and I had a little bit more time to develop it, Apologia Church, so that would have been, well, February, March, somewhere. It was right after we got back. You can look it up, Apologia Studios, on YouTube. But there is a textual variant here. And in Isaiah 6:1, in the Septuagint, instead of it saying what the Hebrew says, the train of his robe was filling the temple, it says his glory filled the house. And so the one place, because some people try to get around this, it was saying, well, he also quoted from Isaiah 53 up above, and so maybe that was, no. The one place where glory is seen is in Isaiah 6 in the Greek Septuagint, which would be the translation of the scriptures that the people John's writing to would have in their own possession. So when he says Isaiah said these things because he saw his glory, there's no question of what he's citing from. It's Isaiah's temple vision. It's where Isaiah saw Yahweh, and it's about Jesus. He saw him and spoke concerning him. Fits perfectly with John 1 through 18. Who is the monogenes theos, the unique God that exegetes the Father? Jesus. Now, again, Ehrman assumes Unitarianism. Has to. He doesn't have any divine revelation, so he has to assume Unitarianism. But then all you then can say is, well, okay, the New Testament writers contradicted themselves. No, they didn't. There is something greater, which is why you're an apostate and don't believe and didn't understand and misrepresent even now. John 12. So, anybody else do that? Well, we know others did that. We know that Paul does it a number of times. But I think it's fascinating to just remind us of 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 14. But even if you should suffer for the sake of righteousness, you are blessed, and do not fear their intimidation and do not be troubled, but sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts, always being ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that is in you, yet with gentleness and reverence. Now, notice that in the New American Standard, do not fear their intimidation and do not be troubled is in all caps. And that is because that is a citation from, you'll see it right over here, Isaiah 8:12. The problem is, if they were consistent, and notice over here in the Greek, you'll notice the italics, the Nesalon 28, tande faban auton, me fabethete, meda tarak theta, and then look at this. Kurion is still in italics. Hagiasata is still in italics. So why didn't these two over here end up in italics? I wish they had. If there was going to be consistency, the New American Standard should have put sanctify, which is hagiazo, and kurion, Lord, in italics as well, because it's continuation of the same quotation from Isaiah 8. Now, there is a variant here. The Textus Receptus has a different reading than the Nesalon text does at this point. You'll notice right here the Textus Receptus has theon, and that's the Byzantine reading, over against P72, Sinaiticus, Alexandrinus, Vaticanus, etc., etc. It's basically the earliest text versus the later text is the there. Now it's visible. But so 1 Peter 3:15 isn't accessible to TR only folks and King James only as far as that goes. But here you literally have, but treat as holy the Messiah as kurios, and that kurios is the Greek Septuagint's rendering of the Tetragrammaton, Yahweh. But treat as holy Christ as Yahweh in your hearts. Always ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you a reason. If you've heard me speak on 1 Peter 3, I've confessed for a decade now that I had spoken on that text over and over and over again as an apologist, because it's the key apologetics text, and had never seen what the background was. And it is recognizing who Christ is, that he is God in human flesh, that prioritizes everything else so that you will respond to all the difficulties and challenges of life differently. And that's what will cause people to ask you a reason for the hope that's within you. They will see the hope that's within you because you prioritize in light of Jesus being who this text says he is. Just one of many that demonstrate that Paul, Peter, John, they all do the same thing. Bart Ehrman's wrong. I don't know why. I don't know how this huge hole in his history and training and theology is to be explained, but there it is. It was exposed at that debate, and he continues to do that as well.